What is a sure sign of low intelligence? This was gonna be mine, too, or close to it. Even the most arrogant intelligent people I've known could at least show some interest in learning, or at most might dismiss it as I don't know, but doesn't matter, does it? People who never not know, might not be complete idiots, but I've never met a smart one like that. I've noticed the pattern of such people never actually answering questions you propose, and instead just keep saying whatever their point is supposed to be over and over again, like repetition alone is supposed to be convincing. Basically, they aren't engaging in discussion, they are just waiting for their turn to speak. Yeah, this is one of my pet peeves. You can see it even in things as simple as asking about a problem with a computer or game, responding to a question you didn't ask, saying that actually that section is super easy and only a baby would have a hard time, or that problem never happened to me therefore it can't have happened to you, etc. Definitely grinds my gears. All of those people just found a perfect recipe to never feel like they lost, just a war of attrition. You don't have to be right, you just have to be willing to keep commenting until the other person gets bored and moves on. Last words equals argument 1. You'd be surprised, these organizations go for the ignorant and naive, or the vulnerable and the desperate. If it sounds an awful lot like a cult to you, well, you are correct. Women and religious groups like the Mormons, LDS, are especially targeted because their religion heavily discourages them from formal work. Also, Cutco and Primerica tend to target teenagers trying to nail their first job. You can find out more on our team if you want. It kinda goes beyond intelligence. Being proven wrong causes what's called cognitive dissonance, which triggers the same parts of the brain that trigger when pain is felt. It's more of a sign of virtue and of being capable of rationalizing your own mind than pure intelligence. Some intelligent people don't own that virtue and lack the emotional prowess to respond in a logical way to their own mistakes. We had a new machine in that day at the warehouse. I had to stay late to catch up, and when I came down from the office, she was just sitting there, resplendent. The forks had yet to be dulled from use and I stared at them, imagining what it would feel like to be a wood pallet, thrust into deliciously and carried wherever the forks saw fit to place me down. Everyone had gone home, and I felt myself shudder, thinking of the myriad number of hands at the controls. Someone had left the keys in the ignition port. I went to take them out but hesitated. Instead, with my face growing hot, I decided to hell with it and turned on the machine that already had me turned on. It thrummed to life and I started to caress the casing around the controls. The machine remained impassive, unwavering, making my loins weak. I had to press my pubic mountain against the lift control and the forks rose with my turgid member. Same. My mother refused to tell any of us our scores. She did let me know I had the lowest of my siblings, though. One day I'll find out. Might be another 20 years. But I'll get them. She better not have it in her will to have the papers burned before we can see them. I wouldn't be surprised. When I worked at a movie theater, the amount of people who would insist they were right about something when they clearly were wrong was way too fucking high. I have had people insist that their pass from AMC theaters, that says AMC on the front in giant letters, that has the AMC logo on it, was our pass. We had Regal in giant 5-foot-high letters on the front of the building, and every single employee had the logo stamped onto their shirt. They would even insist that the last time they were here we were an AMC. I have no idea how these types of people can actually exist and insist against something when they're so clearly wrong. They found that the higher your intelligence, the more uncertain you are of everything. You may be an expert in a field, but you don't consider yourself an expert because there will always be something you don't know. Traits like anxiety and depression is just more common for people who receive more knowledge, especially if it pertains to their field. Now, just because you don't have depression or anxiety doesn't mean you aren't smart or anything. It's just what they kind of found out. Now action and inaction is a different matter altogether. If you have high intelligence, and it goes nowhere, then what is it? The smartest people I know don't have to tell anyone they are smart. People are aware of this from the things that they say and do. The people I know who believe they are smart are thicker than treacle. Some people have a bit of a big fish in a small pond thing going on, where their social group and work acquaintances lack intelligence and they've always felt like the smart one. In my experience, the self-belief then leads to them making fools of themselves outside of that group. They repeat shit over, and over, and over, and over, and over. Yo, you could be right, or that person is suffering from a mental illness that you don't know about. Today I learned about rumination, to which I fit the bill in the description used to describe ruminating. If I catch someone repeating something, I wouldn't assume they have low intelligence. Edit. It really fucking sucks seeing posts in this thread that talk about signs of low intelligence when it's likely that individual is probably suffering an unchecked mental illness. You're asking, go get help then, when it is in fact never that easy nor cheap. Also toss in the stigma still attached to seeking therapy, and yeah, you got a lot of people living day to day with some form of mental illness that just compounds over time. Real depressing when the fake wokeness is on display but falls short when it comes to recognizing and defending mental illness. Edit 2. I appreciate every one of you who took the time to respond to share their similar struggles and experience. By opening dialogue, you and I are sharing our experiences and knowledge on the matter. I honestly googled the feeling I had in me that I could have never successfully described until coming upon it. It was that curiosity where I began reading more about my mental health. It is as if a light clicked in my head, you know? Like you spent this much time feeling lost in the middle of the ocean and now you can see a lighthouse. The lighthouse is marvelously far away, but I can see it now. Fuck you, I'm not crying, lol. Thank you for saying this. I have memory problems. I used to be whip crack quick at doing things and recalling information. Now I'm not. When I remember something, I am 100% reliable. Now it's 50-50. And spotty all over. But forgetting something doesn't mean I can't understand a concept anymore. It just means my brain hasn't recorded the information or the pathways can't join for me to recall it from my memory bank. It is so sad for people to think memory equals intelligence. Also, sometimes this is the result even with help. Sometimes it's just a case of managing your life the way it is, instead of trying to get back something that is lost forever. Wild, outraged customer. I realize it is an atypical sign or low intelligence, but the few times I have witnessed an adult throw a tantrum in a place of business, it is because they are incapable of understanding the company policy, which renders them unable to make the return, exchange their item, receive an accommodation, etc. It is a terrible combination of low intelligence and entitlement. My ex was so intensely afraid of people finding them stupid that they literally couldn't laugh at themselves ever, even about things that happened years prior. Made things very uncomfortable sometimes, and I was made out to be a terrible person if I giggled at a little silly mistake they made. I generally thought they were a smart person, but since the breakup I've questioned their intelligence and how much of it was just a need to feel superior to other people. I had a friend once who would confront these people by asking if they needed to borrow headphones, but then she actually carried around a dirt cheap spare pair of headphones with her to back that up. I really admired her dedication to the bit. The worst thing anyone could accuse her of was being aggressively nice. Believing that the earth is flat. Edit. Flat earthers show an incredible ignorance towards factors that determine intelligence, rational argument, empirical data through scientific studies, direct observation, collective research, laws of physics, plain old common sense. Their belief stems from the desire to absorb and distribute nonsensical ideas because it challenges general opinion. Also, from my speaking with some of these deluded individuals, they have a yearning to directly contradict facts that come from the government. That, my dear readers, is what I class as low intelligence. When your responses are essentially scripted, based on propaganda where it's clear you've done no actual research, or just irrelevant to the topic at hand, it just comes across as incredibly intellectually weak. A cliché example of this is something like, "This is the greatest country in the world, we are the best at everything, everybody is desperate to come here, and you live in a communist socialist fascist state and pay 85% tax, oh, and you're jealous of our guns and we could nuke you anyway, but we also saved you in 8 world wars." I don't really believe intelligence is a sliding scale. People are usually good at some things and bad at others. I'm good at words but pretty shonky at maths. I have an uncle that's very gifted with computer programming, brags about his kids doing well in STEM subjects but is also anti-vax, anti-mask, etc. People are complicated. That's a really good point. It's very easy for someone to do something that seems dumb, but without context there's no real way to judge. Financial decisions are an interesting one. We often think someone else is dumb for how they use their money, but people just have very different priorities. As long as someone is meeting their priorities with their choices, they aren't unintelligent or wrong, they're just not the same as someone else's. There is a thing called G factor which is seen as general intelligence. It explains why the same people do usually well in different kind of cognitive tests. Each person has limited time to gather knowledge and life experience though, and no one can come up with anything from the scratch. There have been billions of people before us. It took the human race for 300 years to realize that there are actually microbes out there. So you can't have a proper opinion on coronavirus if you don't study and learn. No matter how cognitive there you are, nature cannot be fooled. There are also dozens of different ways a person can be gifted intellectually. They could have a higher crystalline memory, or higher fluid memory. They could have better visual, mathematical, verbal or musical processing. They may be great at 2D visual abstract understanding, but shite at 3D. They could have higher bodily kinesthetic intelligence and be coordinated, precise, a dancer or sleight of hand master. They could have solid mathematical skills, but nothing of emotional intelligence and struggle with basic things like social interaction because of low emotional intelligence. It's hard to quantify all of those, but misinformation and cult-like circular thinking can get anyone. Lots of intelligent people have been drawn into cults or wild conspiracy theories over the years. It's one of the things that makes them so insidious. My brother-in-law was like that. I called the phenomena book Smart Life stupid. He made a ton of money doing high-end programming in the 90s and early 2000s, like to the point that companies were flying him into a city on contract MF, putting him up at a hotel with everything like room service and booze included and paying him $100 per hour on top of all that. So tech career-wise he was doing very well. Unfortunately he also dated people that everyone told him to stay the fuck away from as he was naive as shit. Eventually, after going through a handful of girlfriends just using him for his money, he fell in with one who introduced him to crystal meth, coke, and Christ knows what else. Baked his brain, lost his source of income, lost his house, lost everything. Spent the last years of his life on government assistance until he was found dead of a stroke that was of indeterminate origin but suspected as a complication of his previous drug use. Golly gee sir/madam/bean, I have a list. Trying to follow 1950s cleaning advice and mixing cleaning supplies, putting coins and rocks on railroad tracks, fishing with dynamite while swimming in the water, eating random mushrooms you find in your yard, getting out of the vehicle to pet the hippos while on a safari, swimming with red piranha during the dry season, jumping into a river to save an injured kangaroo, picking up and taking a selfie with a blue-ringed octopus on your hand, sticking your genitalia in a giant sea clam, forgetting what a mountain lion's mating call sounds like and going towards the crying baby in the deep woods, playing with and handling freshwater snails, going to the isolated North Sentinel Island with the intent to convert them to a religion, trying to play fetch with a wolverine, trying to pet a moose you found in the woods, trying to clean your toaster and take a bath at the same time. Yes, I work in a veterinary clinic. Masks are mandatory as soon as we step inside theater and have been long before the pandemic kicked in. They stop pathogens from getting out, not getting in, and help to keep the theater sterile. It makes me laugh when people who know what I do for a living say things like I'm not wearing one. They stop oxygen from getting to my brain. Do they really think we'd be able to perform delicate surgery on animals for hours on end if oxygen intake was an issue? Yes. Because obviously top-level Nazis are the basis for the average racist person. There are some people who are racist and also intelligent, but studies show that people who score higher on intelligence tests are less likely to hold racist beliefs, and reversely people who hold racist beliefs are more likely to score low. Unfortunately, that isn't true. All human beings have the ability to fall for tribalism, othering and dehumanization. Anti-Semitism and social Darwinism was the belief system of most educated and intelligent people at certain periods in history. It's a common cognitive bias and even intelligent people fall for it. It's why growing up in diversity is so important, so people who seem different are humanized, and racist pseudoscience needs to be combated because even intelligent people can fall for it because of our universal cognitive bias for tribalism. I was reading this memoir called Made. In it, this 28-year-old woman becomes unexpectedly pregnant, and keeps it even though the dad says he doesn't want it, and she's known him only 4 months. Then he becomes abusive and she leaves. She has no skills, so she works as a maid to get by. Cool. But then she gets some extra cash and immediately puts that towards a Match.com membership. She meets another guy and moves herself and her kid in with him after 4 months of knowing him. He also turns out to be an asshole, so she leaves. But not before telling him, "I saved some monazis of my daughter for when we could have had kids." This whole time she's been struggling with one kid, and she wants to bring another into this shitty situation. Then her daughter is struggling with health issues because their shitty apartment has black mold. When she gets a chunk of cash, she spends it on a diamond ring, instead of a better apartment. Anyway, the book ends with her going to college. You'd think she's learned a thing or two by now, but no. After the book, she got pregnant in her final year of college, married the guy, and then he strangled her. She called the cops, but then worked very hard to erase this off of his record. She left him eventually, but damn, how does she never learn? So that is a sign of low intelligence. Shallowly studying a complex and difficult problem for a short time and believing you've hit upon a novel solution all the so-called experts have missed. For reference, see Donald Trump suggesting that perhaps industrial disinfectants might be used to flush the virus from someone's lungs, as if it's coating them like a layer of pesky soap scum. As someone with autism, I can confirm, I have lots of trouble picking up on the majority of social cues and proper responses, especially if someone catches me off guard. Yet, I keep getting told that I'm smart. Question is, if I'm so smart, why have I not thought of a reliable way to interpret and appropriately respond to social cues the moment they happen? I fully agree. You can immediately spot a dumb fuck with a cognitive capacity of a goldfish this way. Also, hitting the brakes very slightly, just enough for brake light to come on, will usually prompt immediate aggressive response. Don't do it though, as these idiots have no connection between actions and consequences, so you would be putting yourself in harm's way. I just refuse to engage by slowing down with taking my foot off the gas pedal. Assumption that you know all that is worth knowing. People who are genuinely lower IQ have very little sense of wonder about the world. Everything they need to know they already know, and they believe anyone who is a specialist in an academic area is easily dismissed as a nerd or uninteresting. I went to grad school for mathematics and encountered this all the time. So you are one of those guys who hangs around all day and does long division? Believing that idiocy created the earth and the rest of the universe, and gives a single fuck whether you, one of 8 billion people on this tiny planet in the middle of a vast universe, gives a single fuck that you fucked someone out of wedlock, or any other sin you can think of. I mean, babies get cancer, people suffer the most horrendous atrocities. Why would this deity let that happen to an innocent baby, but send you to a place of permanent torture, after you die, for gluttony, eating too many cakes? Even the priests don't believe it, obviously, while they are out sodomizing little boys. It's 2021, drop the fairy tales, use a bit of critical thinking.